We are live across the board, and we're on Twitch on Banner and Backbone. Fantastic. All righty. My friends, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode or another report. We are here live on Banner and Backbone as well as the Firebrand project. My name is Shane. I am an independent geopolitical analyst, and I'm here to give you guys the best available information so that you guys can make all of the calls, get all of the information, and get a better picture of the situation around the world every day. Thank you so much for joining me. And this is going to be an episode where, traditionally we do throughout the week, we do spotlights by region. So we'll do Africa, we will do Iran, we will do Africa, we will do Asia, we do the United States and the EU, right? All of these different opportunities that we have to look at the different regions around the world and bring you guys enough information that you guys can get a general idea of exactly what is going on in a broader sense by region to help you guys get a better understand of the overall global picture and how things are currently going in that particular region of the world. So today is going to be our African spotlight. And we're also going to cover some of the breaking events that are literally evolving minute by minute. And of course, I am referring to the war in the Middle East. So we'll get to that in a minute. Just give me 1 second. Looks like my network's having a little bit of a hard time. So I'm going to swap. I might break up for a second, but I will be right back. And there we go. All right, everybody. I mean, this is going to be one of those days where it's going to be one of those weeks where we really just don't know what the outcome of a lot of these situations is going to be. I mean, there's just absolutely no question, though, that we're looking at a moment in time where we're facing tremendous instability in the Middle East, but around the world as well, but in particular in the Middle East and in the Sahel region. So as we go and as we're looking at Africa and all of these things today, I'd also like you to kind of keep in mind that a lot of these conflicts across Africa are largely tied into kind of the same stressors and do absolutely affect what is going on in these other regions as well. So when you see large scale destabilization like we're seeing in Iran, and you pair that with the extremely unstable situation that we've been seeing in Africa, particularly in the Sahel region, where a lot of these countries are actively engaged in military operations against the UAE-backed proxies, particularly in Sudan with the RSF, which is also one of these flashpoints. You have Pakistan and Afghanistan that are still at war. We're going to talk about that today. But in all of these things, I just want you to know that as you come here, and the most important thing that I'm committed to is giving you guys verifiable, concrete, data-backed information so that you guys are getting the same quality and level of information that the professionals and the analysts are getting, because that's where I get my information, and that is the quality of reporting that you should expect from independent journalists. And if you're not getting that elsewhere, I'm going to give it to you here, and I'm going to continue to do that regardless of how others continue to conduct themselves in the space. That means I'm going to give you the full picture. That means I'm going to give you the whole scope. And if I don't know something is absolutely confirmed, I'm going to tell you that. And most importantly, I'm not backed by any big corporate, I'm not backed by any big corporation. I have never worked for mainstream media. I am a 25-year-old guy who gives a crap about democracy and peace on a global scale, and I'm committed to providing you guys with that truth and that information. So if you are not already a subscriber, do that. If you are a subscriber and you can support me financially as a subscriber, do that, because especially with what's going on in Iran, I've been working tirelessly. I've been putting out daily updates. I'm working with other publications in an independent capacity. I'm working with for Centered America as an analyst in a capacity. I'm working with other folks. I'm working with Banner and Backbone. So if you guys can support me, as I really give it my all, please do that. And so with all that said, we're going to go ahead. We're going to get into the report. We're going to get into the news. We're going to talk about what's going on across Africa. And we're also going to talk about what's going on in Iran as well towards the end there. So keep all that in mind. We will talk about Iran a little bit at the end, but you guys are going to get a daily update. I've put out one every single day of the war with 5 key takeaways from that day. So don't saturate yourself with all of this information. Don't go crazy watching all these bombs and missiles go off. Just hang in there and monitor my page, and make sure you subscribe so you get the email, and I will be sending out daily briefs with key takeaways intermittently throughout the entirety of this conflict to keep everyone informed on what's really going on. So to give you guys, though, a little bit of an idea of what's going on in the Middle East, I'm going to go ahead and play you a couple minutes of a video from the Times of India. And, regardless of the actual credibility of the Times of India, which I think, generally speaking, I do look at them. I'm not 100% confidence here, but I do trust the actual satellite footage. I said in my previous reports, honestly, as well, one of the first things I was saying when all of this started was, in fact, that the biggest indicator of the success of these operations is going to be seen with the actual satellite footage, where we will be able to verify whether or not these strikes occurred. So, before we get started, I just want to give you guys a quick look at some of the key sites here. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll get into everything, and we will do our Africa Spotlight, and we will go ahead and do the show as we normally would. But I do think this video kind of puts it pretty well in terms of, exactly how nice this was for how successful the United States is right now and the cost of this operation thus far. So we'll go ahead. I'll show you this. I'm going to mute myself for a second. And when we're done with this here, I'll go ahead and hop into the report.
Satellite images now appear to confirm significant damage to U.S. military installations across the Middle East. New imagery from commercial satellite firms Planet and Airbus shows that 2 satellite communications terminals were destroyed at the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet in Manama, Bahrain. The strike marks one of the most serious escalations in the widening confrontation between Iran and the United States. According to an analysis by the New York Times, drawing on satellite imagery, authenticated videos, and official U.S. military statements, Iran struck at least 6 American military sites after Washington and Tel Aviv initiated attacks on Iranian territory. The assessment paints a stark picture of a coordinated and far-reaching response unfolding across multiple fronts. Exactly how many missiles or drones were launched remains unknown. It is also unclear how many were intercepted before reaching their targets. The fog of war lingers. But what cannot be obscured is the damage. cornerstone of American naval power in the Gulf. Fireballs erupt against the skyline. Shockwaves ripple across the harbor. At the time of the strike, the port, typically crowded with U.S. warships, appeared largely empty, an eerie detail that only deepens the sense of how close the confrontation has come to direct, large-scale losses at sea. Satellite images taken Sunday reveal the aftermath in chilling clarity. Communications infrastructure obliterated, multiple buildings heavily damaged, others reduced to twisted debris and dust. What was once a symbol of American maritime dominance now bears the visible scars of a rapidly widening conflict. In Kuwait, images from Ali Al Salam Air Base show collapsed rooftops following reported Iranian strikes. U.S. officials say 3 American service members were killed and 5 seriously wounded in an attack on Camp Arifjan, though no satellite imagery of that specific strike has yet surfaced. In Erbil, Iraq, footage shows repeated strikes on the military installation at Erbil International Airport, where U.S. forces are stationed. Smoke and flames were seen rising into the sky. By Sunday morning, reports claim at least 4 structures damaged or destroyed, with fires still burning into early Monday. In the United Arab Emirates, satellite imagery from Jebel Ali Port shows smoke rising from a large building inside a fenced U.S. Navy recreational zone. Though not a formal U.S. base, Jebel Ali remains one of the Navy's most frequently used ports in the region. A widely circulated video from Camp Buehring in Kuwait appears to show a drone flying over the installation before exploding inside the perimeter. The exact impact site and damage level remain unverified. Across Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, multiple facilities have sustained damage. While no fatalities have been reported outside Kuwait, the sheer scale of the destruction has sent shock.
So, just a note, there's videos of people running to these jets when they go down. And in one of the videos, you literally hear, in one of these videos, you literally hear them say, "Oh, he's American, leave him." Uh, there's a lot of hatred in the Middle East towards America, and so there's just a lot to consider in that regard. But just so you guys, now we have kind of an idea a little bit about what you're seeing there in the Middle East in terms of the damage. And if you want more information, of course, make sure you're subscribed to me so you get my takeaways that I've been doing for the last couple of days. And you can also go and find my TikTok where I'm doing short form explainers that also give you guys an idea over the general situation as a whole. So you guys can go and find all that information. My link tree is in my bio as well. It's going to be attached to pretty much every article, every post. So if you're watching this recording live, have you hit the like button? Have you? If you haven't, do it. If you're watching this recording, have you hit the like button? Have you? Do it. And with all that said, my friends, let's hop into the report. We're going to be talking about Africa. We're going to talk about Pakistan and Afghanistan a little bit. And we've had a lot of new folks. So a lot of this report as well, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more background context and all that jazz. So, we'll get into that. So my friends, it is March 3rd, 2026. It is March 3rd, 2026. I am reporting to you from California in the United States of America. Not proud to be American at the moment, but I doubt any of us are over here. And so with all that said, the world is on fire. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Firebrand Report, everybody. African Spotlight, and World War Trump. So we're going to touch on it all today. I'm going to get you guys up to date on at least the kinetic aspect. There's a whole economic side of this that I'm going to be looking into soon. but there's a lot going on, right? So I'm literally seeing strikes. I've got monitors up on my, computer, on my other monitors, where I'm literally getting notifications probably every minute on some sort of strike or something happening. So it's just a lot right now. But there is going to be a massive economic outlook here, consequence, and I will cover that here as well. So just keep that in mind. That will be coming. So Africa, Africa is going, particularly Sahel, but this is it's no longer a frontier. It's not a place full of resources. It's becoming, at least shaping itself to be some form of operating system for the next power confrontation in the region. And what I mean by that is your supply chain warfare, controlling of resources. And this cannot be, any more clear, particularly in the Sahel region and the Great Lakes area, where you're starting to see wars go from, religious wars or wars of, between ethnic groups, to resource wars that are being fought around access to critical minerals and resources that the West in particular is very hungry for. And it's taken on a whole new dynamic. And it's one of those things where now the fights are not for, maybe per se the government or the city. It's who controls the mines, who controls the corridors. And, your coups, right? Your military juntas, the people that are taking over, they're just as interested in taking these things as well. And it's created just a war zone. Um, you know, Today we're going to track basically three arcs that are converging. You have the militarization of the Sahel. The Africa Corps is coming in larger numbers at the request of a lot of these military juntas to help with jihadist insurgencies. You're seeing a backslide towards a full-scale war in Ethiopia, and which changes the entire dynamic for Red Sea risk, which I'm sure, if you can consider, probably wouldn't help the overall situation. You can imagine, considering what's going on around the Red Sea as well. And of course, you're looking at the Congo, which is a war zone, particularly Eastern Congo, which you could argue that whole Kivu region, at least part of it, is not the DRC. It's a proxy territory of Rwanda. We're going to talk about all these things, but you've got so many different events and independent wars and conflicts going on. And it's really all concentrated in this very resource-rich region of Africa. But it's also spreading to the Middle East, because at that same time, these interests, particularly these Gulf states that are invested in Africa and between the Saudi Arabia and the UAE, that have been fighting on every proxy front, whether that be Yemen, whether that is Sudan, wherever they are fighting, it is a proxy war that's already going on. And so we're seeing all of this bleed over, and this destabilization on top of this, it presents a whole new set of issues. So Ethiopia is edging back toward a major war in the north. So federal forces and Tigray's People Liberation Front are both rearming and repositioning around Tigray. It has been barely a year since the peace deal in Pretoria was supposed to end this conflict over the Tigray region. Addis Ababa is simultaneously fighting a grinding insurgency by the Oromo Liberation Army across central and western Ethiopia, which is raising questions about the risk of even an additional northern offensive against Tigray. In early 2025 to early 2026, you started to see, or 2025 to early 2026, these TPLF talks that were attempting to be mediated are falling apart. And there's over disputed territory, the return of displaced people, and basically just a lack of commitment to the Pretoria Agreement itself. You can get that even farther as we go into January of this year. You're starting to see clashes and drone strikes hitting near and around Tigrayan unit as federal and Tigrayan units are both testing each other on either side of the border in northern Ethiopia. The federal troop deployments are now officially, they're moving large groups of troops, Ethiopian troops, towards the northern border. And it's important to note that the Ethiopia particularly, you know, has a very close association with the UAE. They've been literally caught training RSF troops and allowing the UAE to build a massive base in Ethiopia, which allows the RSF to open up an entire new front in Sudan. So, there's a tiny, there's just not a tiny, I mean, Sudan is actually going to escalate as well. I firmly believe that at the same time we're seeing this happen in Iran, we're going to see escalation in the Sahel very soon. And I'm not the only one saying this. This sentiment is echoed by a lot of the think tanks that I follow, particularly the Critical Threats Project, who do an excellent job tracking the African conflicts. And they say the Ethiopian federal government will likely launch an offensive against the Tigray People's Liberation Army within the next month to neutralize the TPLF and its role in an emerging anti-government coalition. So a newer war, a renewed Tigray war wouldn't be like a smaller contained version of 2020 to 2022, which saw thousands of casualties, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands displaced. It was a brutal war, and it really was at the time one of the most horrific things going on in Africa. Eritrea is deepening its support against Ethiopia, which means that Eritrea basically is backing the TPLF. Ethiopia has stated that it believes that it is entitled to port access, particularly a port in Eritrea, and the threat of Ethiopia taking those next steps to attempt to gain control of that port, which would ultimately be a war with Tigray. And if they claim Eritrea is backing the TPLF, that gives them the opportunity to open up that additional front. And you could see war not only between Ethiopia and in the TPLF, but Eritrea as well. So we're looking for triggers. We're looking for a uptick in drone strikes. We're looking at overt Eritrean deployments near the border, and you're looking at any signs that you're seeing them exploiting, or OLA units basically are exploiting redeployments to close areas around Addis Ababa. So Addis Ababa, that's what we're watching there. Probably we're going to see war between Ethiopia and Tigray for sure. Eritrea will probably get drawn into it. That's just the way it's going. That's what happens, and that is something that I was covering beforehand. I mean, it's like the war itself, the wars I've been covering are still going on. Everything is still happening. It's just that also everything with Iran is happening, but all the crazy stuff that I cover every week, all of these insurgencies, the just war zone that is Africa, still happening. And I really don't know how much worse this makes everything and how this affects these other conflicts. I do believe that it is going to intensify them. And it could also show a uptick in anti-United States sentiment across Africa, which could pose a very real threat to United States embassies and citizens across Africa, because of course, if you haven't known this, that Iran did declare jihad, or a holy war, against the United States, which means that some of these Muslim or Islamist extremist groups are likely to take up that banner in Africa as well. I would expect that to happen. So, it's a largely destabilizing eh, declaration in general. I'm sure that's why they did it. But in general, the overall Sahel region needs to be addressed as well. And what I'm saying Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. So the Central Sahel is basically hardening into a Russian-backed regime survival zone, where a bunch of military juntas in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger ousted the government, and they are trading their long-term sovereignty for short-term protection from jihadist insurgents, because these countries, they militaries overthrew the government, and they outed the Western forces, which were primarily French, some US, and instead decided they were going to bring in Russia to deal with all of these insurgents. And this is going about as well as you would expect. You know, the irony is, the more foreign troops they bring in, the more violent it gets. It's almost paradoxical. So, especially in Burkina Faso, where you're seeing the epicenter of a lot of mass fatality attacks in the region. Like, I haven't even had time to cover Burkina Faso in any kind of very explicit or long-term like larger deep dive. I mean, this is just Africa. It's really all like on fire. Like, it is just a war zone. In 2022 to 2023, you had coups in all three states, where you basically saw them topple the civilian governments. Usually these militaries were claiming basically like, oh, the French backed and our government, our democratic government, they can't beat these jihadists. So they ousted the military, or the government took control, and now they're getting hurt even worse than they were before. In 2025, in September, you saw Al Qaeda linked Janim. They imposed a blockade on Bamako, and they hit fuel convoys along the corridor that carries roughly 60% of Mali's trade. This is following our pattern of these groups, these insurgents. They know if they want to do the most damage, they attack critical supply chain infrastructure, roads, or even the source, by seizing mines, like and oil fields and things like that, like we're seeing in Sudan, as well as a lot in Rwanda, in the DRC. And we will talk about that as well. The current reporting suggests that there's about 3,500 Russian troops in Mali, with the Africa Corps, and thousands more expected. Even as jihadist attacks intensify in Burkina Faso, with an unprecedented operational coordination. Guys, the insurgencies are getting better equipped, better coordinated, better funded, and it's all because of basically the rapid build out of very expensive supply chains, and resources in a region that they can't guarantee that these facilities are going to be protected in any reasonable capacity. And that's just what we're seeing. They take something that produces a resource, and they sell that, and they make money, and they fund themselves, and they have better equipment sometimes than the actual government itself, or the military of that country that they're operating within. So in general, in the Sahel, the mineral war is a lot less about the lithium and more about the political capital. It's the juntas are using these access to resources, and they're monetizing that to give these other countries access who want control over future resource deposits, and to get concessions from these regimes for security. So even though these jihadist groups are, they're refining their siege warfare capabilities, at the same time, we're also seeing them go and sell out, all of their defense to Russia, because they can't beat these people, and Russia is not a good trade in any way for a Western-backed military. Certainly, France, which is one of the best militaries in the world, who has been operating in Africa for decades. And has a pretty solid track record against these insurgencies. Is not necessarily the failings of France as much as the um, change in the abilities and resources that these jihadists or extremist groups have. Uh, what you're really seeing, though, with if Russia comes in as well, you're seeing what is kind of colloquially called the authoritarian belt, which solidifies from Guinea through Burkina Faso to Mali and Niger and into Chad. Basically a bunch of autocracies where you just have had this trend in Africa in general, where the kind of forced democratization of Africa is not going to persist, because there's too much financial incentive for these governments to be corrupt and take all this money and starve their people. It just, understand what it is to be human, and you'll understand geopolitics, right? So it's just, if expect people to do the worst, and you won't be surprised. And it sucks to say it, but we get lots of examples. If somebody can starve their neighbor but be so wealthy they never have to work again, they'll do it. Especially in the regions of the world where they are facing the most extreme poverty, literally to the point where the UN and the ICC, I believe they already did this, but they approved. I think they approved that basically global southern nations can now sue Western nations for climate change, because of the effects of Western consumption on Africa. I mean, these people suffer so the West can live in luxury. That is what is going on. And that is exactly what you would expect. If you create these conditions for countries, they won't last. So we really have to consider all of this as we're looking at the Sahel. But that particular region will be interesting, because what I anticipate is that they will bring in all these Russian forces, and those Russian forces will no longer be adequate. They will fail to stop these jihadists as well. And then you're looking at an entire belt of countries that could actually fall to insurgency. And at this point, Western militaries they don't have resources to do this. The U.S. certainly will not have resources to intervene. Europe is trying to fight Russia, trying to prepare to deter Russia. The Middle Eastern or the Gulf powers, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and I'm spacing on one of them, but they are all in alignment against the UAE. They're dealing with that. So it's like and Turkey, they're fighting their own wars. No one has resources to deal with this. Like the African countries themselves, they need to deal with it, and they can't. And that leaves a lot of questions. I mean, at this point, I firmly believe that at least a couple of these countries are going to fall in some capacity to these insurgencies. And there's more across Africa. That's exactly right. 4% of people produce 30% of the emissions. Correct. Americans produce more emissions than anybody else per capita. It's pretty gross, actually. So we're going to talk now about the DRC, because this is also one of those conflicts where, if you've been with me for a while, you know that I've been watching this one because it's a great case study. All of these conflicts kind of run the same thing, but I also was watching this because this is one of Donald Trump's peace deals that is a nothing burger. In fact, they're all nothing burgers, but this one in particular is quite embarrassing. And so it's always fun to point out that he sucks and he's lying all the time. We don't get much joy around other things here. So I like to highlight that they're pretty fucking stupid. So the DRC, the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, we're entering a new phase where we've really started to see a lot of drones enter into the conflict, where you're seeing a lot of use of these newer kind of uh, FPV drones, loitering munitions, things like that being used across the region. And so it's causing a lot of casualties, and it's also causing a lot of forced adaptation as well. But the large, kind of primary driver in this entire conflict has been the access over the mineral-rich region that is the North Kivu and South Kivu region. Um, M23 is basically a Rwandan-backed proxy. They have seized a significant amount of territory from the DRC, which the DRC has not been able to get back at this time. There is a ongoing fight, but to be honest with you, I tend to err on the side that there's a M23 has generally more momentum than the DRC. I will say that the most recent update that I have is that a M23 military spokesman was killed by a drone strike in the Rubaya. But broader FARDC offensive pushes are being again launched on several axes in the region, including Rubaya, which is very important because it's where one of the most important mines in the world that produces 15% of the world's supply of coltan, or which goes into tantalum, which is extremely valuable, right? So you have M23 and these kind of insurgencies is a great example of them controlling actually a huge part of the DRC's GDP. Like, this is not just, they have a mine, we'll be all right. It's like, this is where they make their money. And now M23 is basically Rwanda's military, and the DRC doesn't really have a good answer. In fact, they don't have a good answer because they literally offered the Rubaya mine to the United States to try and entice them to come into the region and further embroil themselves against M23, because they know the United States is desperate for access to these rare earths and critical minerals. But the U.S. doesn't have the bandwidth to do that. And M23 expands its territories every day. So, it's not a they might lose some, they might gain some, but they're not losing decisively in any way. And that is a great example of the governments themselves are failing to independently deal with these insurrections. M23, they have regional governors. They have their own system. They smuggle out all of these exports into Rwanda, mix it with legal exports, and they make tons of money doing exactly that. It's a fact. It's a fact. And they're better supplied, better funded than the FARDC, which, mind you, is responsible for a genocide against the people of the region that M23 is part of. So, there's so many layers to this, but we know that this is not something that really is, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. It definitely doesn't seem like anybody's going to win. And no one winning is victory for the insurgent, right? Like, never forget that. A clear victor not being present is victory for the insurgency. Like, that is the fundamental baseline. Like, they can claim, oh, we got them out of the city, whatever. Unless you win and you maintain control over your country, your population, you control your primary exports, the drivers of your GDP, your financial wealth, your ability to pay back your international debts. Unless you do that, then you're losing. And that, again, is just a decisive fact. Like, there is no questioning that's not victory. What they have is not victory. In fact, I do still at this point believe where that M23 is generally better positioned. But we will see. In the future, kind of what I'm looking for, we want to see if Kinshasa leans farther into drone warfare, and whether or not, uh, if Rwanda doubles down on these deniable deployments, basically denying access to certain resources. Uh, we want to see where the most likely scenario we probably is going to see is not a clear victory, but a permanent war economy, which is what I'm saying, where basically armed actors and foreign military partners and political elites are constantly fighting to keep supply chains and trade routes open, whilst they change hands back and forth constantly without having a consistent or strong, or basically a consistent ownership, which basically creates a very uncertain supply chain for Western companies, for Chinese companies, and basically Africa, the DRC. These places are just not going to be able to maintain the same level of autonomy over these resources that they can. Sounds like you can probably hear somebody wants to leave, so give me 1 second. Go ahead. Go. 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 She's making a big stink. She's making a big stink, screaming. So, of course, Sudan. So, Sudan civil war between the SAF and the RAF. SAF is backed by Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the RSF is backed by the United Arab Emirates, as well as Ethiopia now as well. So we're approaching our third year, and the Western Sudanese and Chad border now are both central to a humanitarian collapse, and military logistic. Chad's decision to close its border to RSF units attack after the RSF attacked Chadian forces is actually a pretty big deal. A lot of the RSF supplies were being flown in from the from Chad, flown into Chad, and then smuggled by the RSF out of Chad. So this is a significant change in their ability to supply themselves, at least. And this has yet to happen. Chad's been pretty wish-washy on how they handle the RSF and accusations that they're supplying the RSF as well. But of course, we have to consider that with Ethiopia now providing effectively a base capable of training over 10,000 soldiers for the RSF, the RSF preparing to open up an additional front in the war in southeastern Sudan, you could see that war basically grow exponentially. So what we're seeing right now in late 2025, we saw the RSF, they intensified their operations around Tyne, which is a critical town on the Sudanese-Chad border, using it as a staging point for operations and logistics, right? So they gain control of this key border town, and they're using it to facilitate the flow of resources out of Chad and to support RSF logistics and fighting. Earlier this year in early 2026, we saw the RSF actually attack the Chadian base near Tyne, killing Chadian soldiers, and ultimately Chad has responded by closing the border and attacking the RSF as well. So the RSF basically is going scorched earth, maybe kind of enjoying that Iranian, everybody or nothing, or maybe they just don't care because Ethiopia is going to kind of help support them. I don't really know. This is one of those things where I do know that all of this is going to get really weird because of what's happening with the US and Iran and Israel. So it's like all of these things that I'm normally concerned about. Now I have to sit back and say, "Oh, well, how does," and I don't know yet. I don't know. I have to sit and give this stuff some thought. So I'll let you guys kind of know what's going on in general. And I'll find the time to sit down and look at, what is happening on in a lot of these other conflicts. Like, I usually have a lot more time to look at the maps and look at, who's moving where and whatnot. And these days, last couple days, I have not been able to do that. Right. So it is, one of those things where, um, you know, there's just a lot to cover. I do my best, obviously, but I also want to make sure I'm giving you guys accurate information, which means that I have to take the extra time to do that. So, um, if I don't, do that, I don't want to give you, I want to be setting you guys the standard for what you can expect from other independent journalists, other independent reporters, because I think it's really important right now, because I think a lot of independent journalists are really dropping the ball. And that's a huge problem because, as a young person, it's our future. And if, they're not going to do it right, young people need to step up and do that. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So if you want to support me in my work, make sure you consider doing that. You can subscribe for free. If you can become a paid subscriber, $6 a month really helps me out. So Burkina Faso, we're going to look into Burkina Faso a little bit more because this is kind of a really good case study here. The question is, how is Libya behaving? I don't know. I would love to know what Libya is doing. I will write down in my book here to look and see what Libya is doing. But, it is, one of those things where just there's so much. There's just so much. I'm working on a couple different ways to track all these conflicts. I'm working on different strategies to basically create ways that we can track these things and update them regularly. So, as I kind of change my focus and operate in an independent geopolitical analyst capacity, we're going to see what I can do, because it'll kind of change the scope of my work. But also, there's, I'm going to be working with other publishers as well. So I'll kind of change what I do here a little bit and focus on supporting other outlets like Centered America that I'm going to be working for in an independent capacity myself, to go and work with them as well. So Burkina Faso, it's the most acute example of jihad battlefields. Militias are coordinating really well. Attacks across all over the country, even as the ruling junta is centralizing power, pushing out Western forces, bringing in Russian forces. It's a combination of the worst possible things. You've got mass fatality rates. I'm laughing because if I don't, it's just awful. Mass fatality rates, shrinking state control, and a leadership that is basically just trading strategic flexibility for ideological alignment. So this month, analysts are warning of unprecedented coordination, new waves of attacks, and jihad command and control actually functioning across multiple regions. So this is really the quote here from the president or from the Atlantic Council. Burkina Faso, not Mali, is the Sahel's epicenter of extremist violence as President Traoré restricts dissent and consolidates power. Rwanda as well is funding a proxy group. And every African country. I think what's interesting, a lot of Western countries don't understand what it's like to have a part of your country actively trying to separate from that country and waging war on that country. As an American, the equivalent I could give you, is imagine that Virginia just decides that it wants Washington, D.C., and it's going to be its own country. And they just start shooting everybody. And they just go to war. They declare war on, South Carolina. They declare war on Washington, D.C. They declare war on all their neighbors. I mean, and the crazy thing is, the United States, they can't do anything about it. So, like, the United States is still the United States, but, like, Virginia is not. Yeah, Virginia refuses to be the United States. I mean, it's the same thing. These countries have massive swaths of territory that are not controlled by them. They are not governed by them. They do not provide services there. Humanitarian aid cannot get in these places. They are governed and run by jihadists or insurgent groups. It's something that Western countries don't really understand, but, like, these countries aren't whole already. They're not united already. So, the Burkina Faso is going to probably be, like I was saying, maybe the first one to go if we do see them fall to insurgencies. So maybe Burkina Faso becomes a caliphate, right? Maybe we see another ISIS-style country for a while, but the world is not in the same place that it was when ISIS took power. Western countries are not in the same place that they were 2 years ago. Their capacity to engage and do these things is depleted. It's certainly going to change. Even Europe is being forced to use military assets. France has scrambled jets to intercept Iranian drones over the UAE because the United States can't even stop these strikes already, and their bases are getting hit. So, who's going to come and stop them? That's the question. And the question, and it's formerly Wagner, now the Africa Corps. Yeah, that's going to be enough. No. So it's pretty tense, I would say, over there, and the future doesn't look stable at all for a region that is extremely important, that the rest of the world depends on for the extraction of its resources, of course, at the expense of those countries and those people. But the global north doesn't really care about that. They never have. So we're going to keep seeing things get worse over there, but I'll keep you guys up to date as things change and as things go on moving forward. I want to talk to you really briefly about Iran. Everything I'm seeing right now, give you guys basically everything in a nutshell. The United States and Israel are dramatically underreporting the response from Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is currently closed. It's been effectively closed for at least 3 days, while it's been 3 days while the conflict has been going on. It is now officially closed. Iran has closed it. You've seen the Houthis activate. Hezbollah has activated. They've launched multiple attacks at this point. The Houthis have successfully sunk a ship in the Red Sea. They have damaged another and forced another aground. Israel has now entered a two-front war with Lebanon, at which the last numbers I saw 150 wounded and 50-something odd killed. So that is getting, Israel's getting hammered. I see videos constantly of ballistic missiles striking Tel Aviv, striking all over Israel, Israeli bases. The United States interceptors are so stressed that they're talking about moving interceptors from Korea to the Middle East because they are currently getting overwhelmed. The United States has lost multiple radars and advanced missile warning systems. So it's ballistic missile advanced warning envelope that it is built over the years with various different radars and missile batteries in different places. Iran is systematically hitting those locations and has succeeded. They did this at the U.S. Fifth Fleet Command, where they actually took out 2 internet radar connection terminals, a huge, super successful strike. The hits Iran is landing. They're good. Like, this is good. If I'm Iran, I'm like, that's great. They are degrading the capacity to respond. And that is forced attrition. That's the US experiencing attrition. The United States asked the UK, can we use your bases? And Keir Starmer allowed that after previously saying they cannot. By the way, super unpopular in the UK. And, I don't know. I don't agree with that decision. I think it puts more people in the UK at risk. I think it exposes the UK to a lot more pain than they're already in. And you could see it intensify strikes on the United Kingdom because of that action, particularly that base. So, but the thing I want to point out with that is that the United States has no reason to need to ask the UK to do that unless, which we're seeing from satellite footage, their operational capacity is being degraded by Iranian strikes, which is happening. The United States has reported, like, the US line on this is pretty, they're flustered. This is not what they expected. I can tell you that much. I think they expected to kill Khamenei, decapitate the regime, and everything would be over. None of that happened. Thousands of strikes, yet Iran on this fourth day is still capable of launching missile waves frequently, intermittently, but frequently. And they're still hitting things. The United States interceptor capacity, their Israeli interceptor capacity, was already at critical levels in terms of stockpiles. And now we're seeing videos of, Israel and the United States launching 2, 3 interceptors to intercept a missile and still missing. Even more concerning is the air defenses of the Middle East, those regions, are American systems. They're Patriot batteries. The United States is not capable of replacing those batteries, those missiles, those interceptors. Some of these interceptors, like the very expensive ones, are getting quoted by Lockheed and whatnot for at least a year out because, of course, the different trade restrictions imposed by China and their monopoly on rare earths and critical minerals. The Strait of Hormuz being closed, we're looking at a global economic catastrophe. You're looking at an energy crisis in Europe, which pivoted away from Russia and leaned very heavily on the Middle East. And Iran is striking the oil infrastructure of these Gulf states. It's a clusterfuck. The U.S. cannot contain this war. And I'm actually certain that if Israel was fighting this war by itself, it would lose. Seriously. I disagree to an extent with there is a certain narrative that has existed for decades that basically the United States can just force whatever outcome it wants in the Middle East. It might hurt, but the U.S. can do it. What we're seeing is that was a narrative, and that Iran itself, even if they destroy Iran, they've activated their proxies. Those proxies have missile stockpiles. So let's assume they destroy, 50% of their launchers, which is what Israel claims. Can't be verified by anyone else. So I'm going to take that with like a 30% confidence because I do not trust Israeli reporting on losses and casualty figures. Why would you? Why would you trust anything that the United States is saying or Israel? Because the satellite footage at this point, the satellite images say they're getting walloped, and that's not the line they're giving people. So I don't think they're credible. I don't think those reports are credible, just like I don't trust the reports that Iran is saying. I don't trust when Iran says, they killed 500 U.S. soldiers, over 500 U.S. soldiers. I don't believe that. But I also don't believe when the United States says that number is 6. I don't believe that either. The United States has really yet to acknowledge the fact that it has lost 4 F-15s. In Iran, I'm going to state here, I have not verified this, but Iran is even claiming that it shot down an F-15. I'm looking into it, haven't seen it, could be. Let's treat it as a maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised. But Iran has a history of exaggerating and lying. But regardless of the case, it's still going to happen. I'm going to put out a 5 takeaway brief this evening. I put one out this morning. Go ahead and go read that after. It's on my website. And there's also a TikTok video that I made this morning as well. If you go to my TikTok through my link tree, which you actually can find right here. I'll put it up so you guys can go and find it. You can go to the link tree here by scanning that QR code and do that for sure. So it's that's kind of what's going on there. And I think that, global pressure is going to intensify, but I don't even think if all of Europe came down on Iran, if everybody attacked Iran, I don't think that they could totally destroy the regime's ability to launch missiles. Iran, I don't think they could do it. And Europe really can't afford to. They're trying to deter Russia. It's on the United States to deal with this. They told everyone they could, and they can't. And regardless of the narratives that we're seeing overall, my takeaway from this is this is way more than they bargained for. And that's, I don't know. I don't think they know what to do with that. I think you have an idiocracy in the United States, and they just opened up a can of worms that they cannot close, and it is explosive, and no one can deal with it. The assumption was always that the U.S. will deal with it. And of course, if Iran and all of that's not bad enough, well, Pakistan and Afghanistan they're still at war. So they're fighting along the Durand line here, and the accusations being that India is supporting the Afghanistan as well as the Afghani Taliban, which is the governing body in Afghanistan, is supporting the Pakistani Taliban, which they are. And so you had several skirmishes across 2025 throughout that time. And of course, eventually, Pakistan has an insurgency problem. Just look at Balochistan. I've reported on that before, but they've basically just started using their military like crazy. So as of most recently, on the 27th, the senior Pakistani officials have declared that patience has run out, and this is now open war. There is not a lot of global bandwidth to facilitate a peace decision. World War Trump, guys. This is World War Trump. And we're in for one hell of a ride. So if you want to get the information, if you want to get verified information that you can trust, if you want to be informed the same way that the experts are informed, if you want what the analysts are looking at and not what mainstream media or a lot of these independent journalist parrots are throwing out there, if you want the truth with receipts, come here, because I'm committed to independent geopolitical analysis and reporting. I'm committed to providing that to my partners, whoever they may be, and I'm committed to providing that to you and citizen journalists who need that information to do what they need to do and to get that message out there. I want to be a place for citizen journalists and citizens alike to come and get information they know they can trust and they know that they can act upon. And I will continue to do that going forward. So hit the like button if you have not already. Hit the heart, smack it, tap it. I want to see the heart scroll here. If you can and are able to subscribe, please do. please subscribe as a free subscriber. That means you get my emails. That means you're going to get things when I put them out. You'll get notified about these lives. That's a great way to basically get yourself in the loop with these things. As well, if you can become a paid subscriber, if you can support independent open source reporting and analysis, then please do that. I'm one of the only people in the space, at least here on Substack, that's really putting in this work. Of course, I'm working with Centered America and Banner and Backbone, both of them, I believe, very high integrity institutions, and that's why I work with them. But I have strong feelings. I have strong opinion on what's acceptable and what's not. I believe that reporting includes the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. And I promise you that every reporter has that information because I can find it, which means it exists. So the question you really should ask yourself is, if Shane can do it, why aren't they? And if they can't explain that to you, then maybe you should just come here instead. Just saying. And as a note, caveat to that, if I don't know, I'll tell you. I won't speculate. It's great. It's great. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this report. I hope you know, and I want you to know that every piece of information in this report or in the newsletter beneath this video is verifiable. You can report or share this with confidence and know that you're not spreading misinformation. And I hope that you all in the Firebrand community or Banner and Backbone or wherever you're watching this do so because that's what I do it for. I do it for you so you guys can act and talk about this information. The age of citizen journalism is here, citizen reporting, and I'm a citizen of democracy. I believe in global democracy. I believe in the right for self-determination, and that starts with equal access to information. So support the Firebrand project however you can. Go ahead and scan this QR code right here. It'll take you to my link tree. There's a link tree in the article underneath this video. You can go there as well. Link tree is in my bio. You can go to TikTok where I make short explainers and stuff like that. But with all that said, everybody, thank you so much for joining me for this Firebrand Report Live. Thank you to Banner and Backbone for continuing to collaborate with me to give me the ability to provide this information to all of you. And I will see you all tomorrow. And you will get a quick brief from me tonight on what's going on in Iran. So if you're not subscribed and you want that brief and you want to see those 5 key takeaways from my analysis, then I encourage you to go and actually follow and subscribe there. So thank you all so very much for joining me. I will see you tomorrow. And remember, burn bright, resist,